If I'm looking rough, it's because I binged the Hulu series Normal People all of yesterday. I did not sleep very well. Like, I'm still in my pajamas. So I read Normal People back in 2020, and I watched the series, but I couldn't get past the first like couple episodes. I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't really feel the book. Overall, I just felt like Sally, and I read Conversations with Friends. I read Normal People, watched a few episodes of that show, and overall, I just kind of couldn't get past the feeling how, for lack of a better word, hetero Rooney came across. And then I read Beautiful World, Where Are You when it came out, and I liked it and I didn't like it. But I told myself one of these days I was going to finish the show, because that show has become a zeitgeist unto its own. It's launched the careers of those two very attractive white people, and I could feel their chemistry in those few episodes that I watched. So I had a solo date to myself. I binged it. It put me in a spiral. Why do they keep crying? They're too pretty. They're one of them is rich and attractive, and she's bullied by everybody. Nobody loves her. I'm too American, I guess, for this. I come from Succession. But yes, ultimately I realized, anxiety was never my issue, but it is for quite a lot of people. And I mean, the best that I could say is Normal People is a very interesting take on what a toxic relationship could look like. I've never seen a toxic relationship look like that, I suppose, because overall I just kept wanting them to break up. They did not belong together, despite the very hot heat of their relationship. So yeah, in other words, I don't know how to start any of my videos, but July has been a very hot month of reading not one, not two, but about five books featuring women leaving their children and maybe unconnected, but they pursue a hot life of their own. So let's just dive right into that. How did Normal People, the show, break me? I mean, first of all, I just really wanted to find, what was his name? Callum, find Callum walking around New York City and get him into a room and lick every individual straight eyebrow hair in his triangle of sadness. And I just want to mention that the instigator of my Normal People binge spiral is the great, the lovely Catsfield Notes, who just put out a very, very fecund summary intermezzo vlog that you should all check out. Link will be in the description box. What was I talking about? Yeah, I usually read a lot of feminist books in July, nonfiction, and if fiction, then something like Nabokov's Lolita, something terrifying to make you think about the absence of feminism. But this year, my summer is fun rom-coms. I'm not complaining. I think I need this. I treated myself to a deeply desired reread of the Neapolitan novels, because I'm seeing so many people that I love here on BookTube starting their own Neapolitan journey. And I first read this back in 2021. I did not do a video on it. I didn't include it in any of my wrap-ups. In the back of my head, always meant to make its own video and talk about it all encased then. I just never got around to it for whatever reason. And so for this reread, I went into it as an audiobook read by Hilary Huber, which felt like a new experience. Any Neapolitan quartet experience is a great experience. But like my ulterior motive behind this particular reread via the audio route was less attached, less precious approach, only to invoke my inner Leela by like writing furiously in my notebook of all of my thoughts and to exercise this torrential excitement I once again went through. That is the reading experience of these books, of this story, no matter how casual I tell myself that I'm gonna keep this to be. And then like I even went extra chaotic by going out of order. I read book 3 and then book 4 and then book 1 and then book 2. Which isn't even like necessarily my favorite, like the order, like my tier ranking of the books. It's just, I don't know, how I chose to dive into this story in my own idiosyncratic way this time. And like I blew through this within weeks, as opposed to like, I think when I first read it, I read it over the course of a year. I kind of took my time, but I couldn't help myself. This month has been all about the easy emotions. No, not easy emotions. This month has been all about the impulse. I will not deny my impulse. But yes, I have never quite made like my Elena Ferrante video, but I will take this time to publicly declare, to publicly announce this book as my Bible. Just for the way that it speaks of everything: politics, life, love, friendship, family, power, class, and all the nitty-gritties within them. I think Nathan of Nathan's Nook, my beloved, likes to ask a lot of booktubers, what is the one book that like changed your perception of life? Something like that, not quite verbatim. Like changed how you see and move through the world. And this is definitely it. This is the book that, like these 4 books, which is really one story that involves many characters over the course of a lifetime, which I argue is very necessary to get the full scope and like context to show how things happen the way that they happen. Like what choices were made, what options were available to each particular character at certain points in their lives. This is the book that I would highlight every page, stick post-it notes onto, and write more notes in like every inch of every margin. This is like favorite book of all time status. Oh, the other reason why I probably felt compelled to, no, I was gonna say that I probably thought that I should reread this after the whole like 100 best books of the 21st century by the New York Times. And spoilers, but this made it onto number 1. But it wasn't. I was already reading this while that list was coming out. Which I'm just gonna quickly say that while yes, I like pumped my fist in the air when this book made the number 1 spot, I have mixed feelings about that whole list. Like it just, all I could think of was, because I believe that that list is compiled by like people in the industry, essentially like other writers and publishers, and they were the ones to nominate essentially like the works of their friends and colleagues. Like how political is that? How tactful must they have been? And so, you know, obviously the immediate reaction that came out from the list was, what about this book? This book is left out. This book was snubbed. And yeah, it's because those writers probably aren't friends with the writers who made this list. So it just felt like really one-sided, really one voice, you know, very American to start off with. And it was fun for a while. But whatever, I am not resuming my New York Times subscription. Where was I? Oh, yes, I was saying that this is like my favorite book of all time status. Like the one that I would want to reread for the rest of my life in like different parts of my life. Kind of like the Before trilogy, where you watch that in your 20s, it hits different. You read it in your 30s, it hits different. You read it in your 50s and it hits different. Just like what details stick out when, what hits differently. I'm not really one for Reddit conspiracy theory spirals, but this has me there, like a myriad of possibilities that I love to entertain in my brain. Like all the thoughts and the meanings and what really happened off screen, etc. Because this story within a story written by a main character who is very unreliable, like you kind of have to remind yourself that throughout the reading, is talking about all of these people that she knew in her life, but you have to believe her, and she is extremely biased. Oh, and this has one of the best fuckboys ever written in literature. The greatest written fuckboy character of all time, and I scream every time his name appears on the page. I will forever find that thrilling. It's also really hard to discuss this book in great detail because of spoilers, which should definitely be kept under wraps at all costs, and it's just best to enter this world blind, pure of heart. Just give yourself to Ferrante fully. But the best part about this book is, even with all of these like intricate facets, memorable characters, strong, powerful writing, it never forgets to be fun. Like this story, despite how heartbreaking, how achingly brutal, it is above all such a fun reading experience. And Elena Ferrante never ditches those basics. Like she knows how to time, she knows how to pace, she knows how to spin you around and zip around a corner and you land smack dab face front to the boy that you had a crush on all your life. And it has good politics, and it has a smart approach with like exceptional quality in every way. And those are all just mere bonuses. I am a huge Ferrante stan. I love this book. Love Elena Ferrante. If you haven't read the Neapolitan Quartet, like, what are you waiting for? You don't want to love a good thing? What are you waiting for? Go ahead, go and read it. The summertime is the perfect time to read these books. How can you get more summery than Italy? The heat, the passion, the inner turmoil. I read All Fours by Miranda July, read via audiobook, read by the author, which I thoroughly recommend. Her like very husky voice gets, wonderfully emotional at times and perfectly wonky. Like she has such a singular personality. The story is very wonky, and so to hear it directly from her voice is truly the way to go. This was my first Miranda July book. I've seen her film Kajillionaire, which is also quite wonky, quite singular. However, I did see like the emotional truth at its core, which this book very much is, but I still didn't expect quite this much like aching, earnest, horny AF, like desperately sad jumble of emotions with a fresh, genuinely unique take on motherhood, marriage, middle age. Hands down the sexiest book that I read this year. Everyone thinks doggy style is so vulnerable, but it's actually the most stable position, like a table. It's hard to be knocked down when you're on all fours. That truly just encapsulates this book in tone. Yeah, I know that this is like a huge buzzy book this year, and I had no intentions of touching this, but because of all the hype from all of the other booktubers raving about this, and because of the fact that I got a skip the line Libby loan, I was like, sure, why not? And yeah, I think it's one of the best books that I read this year. It was very good. It was very emotional. It was a surprising delight. If I had read this in the beginning of the year, I would have put this in my the book that most surprised me in the mid-year wrap-up. Highly recommend the audiobook. Prep your panties. I read Lady in Waiting, My Extraordinary Life in the Shadow of the Crown by Anne Glenconner. I own a physical copy of this book. I completely forgot why, but I read this via audio read by the author, who has the poshest British voice my middle class ears ever did hear. Another sexy book, I gotta say. She very politely said, "That's very kind. No, thank you," to a sex party. I never thought to apply the stiff upper lip to that. There are multiple orgy mentions in this book throughout over the course of her very long life. While I was reading this, and reading certain aspects of her life, things like she was one of Princess Margaret's ladies in waiting. It was her wedding that she met her photographer husband, Lord Snowdon. And so I realized, I probably saw this book in like Vogue as one of the books that was source material for The Crown, which is one of my favorite shows. She's like Princess Margaret's island friend, which I guess the technical title is Lady in Waiting. So initially I was a little put off, like, why am I spending my time reading about the literal aristocracy in 2024? Her family goes hundreds of years back in peerage. They were literal neighbors, friends, colleagues with Queen Elizabeth, as I like to call her, QEII. Yeah, just dictionary definition of privilege. But her life was insane. And really, it's that the 20th century was absolutely insane. She had a very abusive and philandering husband who she stayed with throughout, as people who lived through World War II generally did. She was born in 1932. She's still alive. For gas bombs, people carried gas masks. For rain, umbrellas, solutions, armors, defenses. But for Colin, there was nothing. Yeah, very much move on, get on with it mentality to the extreme. Like, hearing her talk about the deaths of her children, her husband, without so much as an inflection in her voice, she is no Carrie Bradshaw talking about her husband who died on his Peloton. I'm not at all going to stop myself from revealing spoilers for this book, because really, who cares? But not at all to say that this is bad. Like, I actually quite enjoyed this and found her life to be very fascinating. Like, she carried one of her sons in a coma, another son with AIDS during the 80s crisis, buried them both. Her husband had probably like undiagnosed schizophrenia, but he was just one of those like eccentric aristocrats who, at his death, like ultimately betrayed her by leaving his entire family out of his will, maybe as a joke, but like that went very awry for her end. No wonder why she wrote this book. She needs the money. So despite her blindness to her own privilege, which in my honest opinion, it just makes sense given her circumstances. But because of how like fair and open she is in her reflections, it makes me not want to judge her for those things and just go like, wow, what a life she lived indeed. What she went through. Speaking of very British voices, I also read Good Material by Dolly Alderton as a audiobook read by Arthur Darvill and Vanessa Kirby. Perfect casting, wonderful performances. Not particularly sympathetic to the sad sack characters, but the rom-com tone of this is very realistically sad. It's so funny. I was laughing so much. And it's one of those, like, it's so real that it's so funny. There is some real truth in here. Like, why is it so hard to find someone to spend your nights watching TV shows with at the end of the day and sharing our lives with? This starts off being about a middle-aged guy who gets dumped and he completely spirals. He's made that much lonelier because all of his friends are already married with families of their own. And so they're just unavailable for him. He finds himself left out of the infrastructure. Details like his self-consciousness over his thinning hair, throwaway lines indicating he very much notices other people's, taking his cap off and running his hands through his ever-expanding hair. Yeah, I was all set to give this like a solid 3 stars for making me laugh in this lighthearted romp, which is a huge jump from my previous like 1 star to Dolly Alderton's Everything I Know About Love, until the final 5% of the book that like really came together to not only tie it up, wrap it with a perfect bow, but just I mean, I wasn't crying, but I wanted to cry, which still says a lot. And then we met and fell in love, and we introduced each other to all of it, like children showing each other their favorite toys. That instinct never goes. Look at my fire engine. Look at my vinyl collection. Look at all these things I've chosen to represent who I am. We toast everything unremarkable because the length of time we've all known each other makes the simple laws of time so very remarkable. Yeah, I really like this. I felt like Dolly Alderton not only just matured a lot, but like specifically chose to get into the heart of things. Like in Everything I Know About Love and Good Material, she's essentially talking about her peers and the experience of like your 20s and your 30s. And while in the 20s, she was airing more cynical, a little more ashamed of her own behavior with good reason. For Good Material, it really just hit me that like for a lot of people, at least, when you do hit your 30s, you know, you've like seen some things, you've learned some things, you've more or less fell off your saddle, fell off your high horse, and you end up having so much more sympathy about everything. And whether like kids do that for you, whether just mere living life does that for you, I feel like that really shows in Good Material. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. And if you're an Alderton fan, I'm sure that you've already read this and I'm sure that you love this. Unless maybe you're still in your 20s and you're like, what the fuck? This is depressing. Yeah, it is. I read Via Carota, a celebration of seasonal cooking from the beloved Greenwich Village restaurant by Jody Williams and Rita Sodi. Is it Sodi? Oh no. With Anna Kovel. This is obviously a library book. Apparently, this is a very famous New York City restaurant. I did not know. It was not on my radar. However, I did realize that Jody Williams wrote and is the owner of Buvette, which is a very famous French New York City restaurant I am aware of that I went to when I went to New York City last year. Good food. Just like very good, simple French food. Like it's a bistro. And Via Carota is her and her partner's Italian restaurant that I can only imagine is like the Italian trattoria equivalent. But really, I wanted to read this book because I was so curious as to what this cover dish is. It's shaved white asparagus. So, you know, instead of like going right ahead to blind buy it, because I've been burned by so many blind cookbook purchases that I later regretted, I decided to get this from the library, but I kind of regret it because I kind of want to own this book now. I liked it a lot. This book proclaims to be vegetable forward. Usually I would immediately lose interest by that, just because the fresh produce that a lot of these cookbooks tend to use are things that like you can only find from a farmer's market, or it's just not as good. Like it's inaccessible to the average consumer. And this is no different, but I can't help but feel like it's very doable. Like it feels aspirational, healthy. But ultimately, my biggest takeaway from this is it provides a lot of helpful tips to help you get organized better and just be more proactive in your cooking. It encourages you to take that extra step to make a simple dish even that much better. The green salads look so incredible, yet so simple. Which is really, in my opinion, and a lot of Italians' opinions, I suppose, the best way to eat Italian food. It should be simple. It should be straightforward. It should be just a few ingredients that happen to be the best, and that's just a good meal. How can you go wrong? How can you fuck that up? And like the food, even the writing is on the sparser side, which is so refreshing. Like there's no huge backstory to how a dish came to be. There's no like flowery writing of that kind. Just a platter of grilled food in the summer, nuts and chocolate in winter. Oh, olive oil panna cotta with a sprinkle of sea salt. Sounds so delectable. Alas, I just didn't have my shit together this month and I was unable to actually cook anything out of this book. However, I definitely have my eye on this book and restaurant for the future. Maybe I should just move to New York to eat here. I read Wayward by Dana Spiotta, which I did mostly read as an audiobook read by Susan Bennett. And this is about one heinous overbearing mom character who is just way too close to reality for comfort, in my opinion. I really found the very short, abundant chapters to be more annoying than doing anything else. And I felt like it waited a bit too long to tie it all together. And you can see it coming, like something, like shit's gonna hit the fan, something's gonna happen, and it will just all wrap up messily, but nicely. And it did. It just hit a little too late and wasn't as satisfying when it did. But thank God it finally did. I can't say I enjoyed this book at all. However, I also can't just brush it off. There is something here. It is a little disturbing in the sense that it's about someone who is just so fucked up and so crazy, constantly making the wrong choices, and there's really no helping you. Everyone in your life knows this. Like, what are you gonna do with yourself? How do you tackle working on that beast? I've heard quite a few people on BookTube mention this book, how it's about motherhood, but I disagree. Although that is one big aspect, this is more about what it's like to be a mess of a human being. Just an extremely shitty person who isn't self-aware, and what can happen when you finally choose to ultimately work on yourself. Yeah, I just don't think that every element in this book worked, and there are more annoyances than positives, but what was good, I liked a lot. Like, solid 3.5 stars. I read The Anthropologists by Aysegul Savas. I pre-ordered this bitch. I have so much trust in her, and she has not failed me yet. This book is that feeling when you're becoming a new adult, you're striking out on your own, you're away from your family, but you have that family guilt. You're trying to create your own life, and you're just uncertain about what the right answer is. Yeah, this encapsulates that feeling when you're young, you're searching, you're hungry, but like your family guilts you and underestimates you and your capabilities, and the people around you that you found are still in the process of metamorphosizing into their next stage of life, including you. And that's what's truly scary and unnerving about becoming an adult, when you're finding yourself to be something you didn't think that you'd be. This was very slim. It has, much like Wayward, very short little chapters, but this one just does it so much better. These are like short vignette chapters doing like the slice of life reveals, and it packs a lot in each one. Yeah, even with the Spiotta, they're both kind of saying, not necessarily saying the same thing. They're definitely playing in the same playground, but Savas just does it so much better, in my opinion. More concise with a much more delicate hand. Yeah, plot is here. Is the plot in the room with us? But it's very ephemeral, and much like Hetty, Sonnet, Nunez. But I just find Savas's writing to be on a much higher plane. It's so cerebral. The writing is so poetic. All this time we were waiting for the news of some momentous change, that we were being summoned to serve in real life, that the time for playing games was over. We lived with the abstract shape of the news, informing us that it had arrived. We lived with the imaginary shock. Maybe, I thought, it would also be a relief. Here it was, finally. Here was life itself. Oh no, I'm losing the light. Okay, I gotta hurry. So I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and with this book, I am fully on board the M. Hen train. Like, this was very bodice ripping style fun. It was funny. It was so funny. I was cackling at every page, and for a book with this title in this genre, I expected nothing less than an incredibly racy, titillating library scene. This was so corny, with like witty banter, very tongue-in-cheek, being a book about a book, like with the book in the book being just like this book. But I just love it when a woman is appreciated for her personality and good things happen to her. Oh, it's so good, so rare. This was Cantony. This was Gilmore Girls. This was that kind of just guiltless, unbridled, pleasurable fun. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to my next M. Hen. And with that, I had to turn on a light because I lost the sun. I read Artist Life, Icons and Iconoclasts, Visionaries and Vigilantes, and Flashes of Hope in the Night by Jerry Saltz. So I was inspired to read this after getting back into art books. Who better than Jerry Saltz to take me back to school? This is like part memoir of his personal life and his own failed artist journey, part history lessons with essays that he wrote over the past several decades. Always hot takes, like delicious hot takes. To love Norman Rockwell is to shun complexity. These days, galleries are filled with pictures of cute guys collaged onto pretty patterns, something an artist named Andy once did. The best that can be said about Murakami's new work is that he's making pretty money. Yeah, just between all the takedowns, including one of my favorite painters, Lisa Yuskavage. I never know if I'm saying her name right. Yuskavage? To like grousing about the cynicism, the outright rejection of quality in the name of commerce. I just find Saltz to be like an OG, like Andre Leon Talley, who may be a bit boomery, but like always comes from a foundation of history, always champions of the people, and incredibly astute writers. There's just nothing that happened in this world in the past few decades he doesn't know because he was there. His passion proves it. His heyday, I believe, was in the aughts when I was in art school. I recall his like bad boy persona of the time. Like I think that whatever he was writing, people more or less rolled their eyes on. But now that I read this, like, yes, he's savage, but he has conviction. I could use more lessons in criticism. Too many critics act like cheerleaders, reporters, or hip metaphysicians amid art fair frenzy, auction madness, money lust, and market hype, between galleries turning into selling machines, gossip passing as criticism, and art becoming a good job. The system, while efficient, feels faulty, even false. I actually recommend going the audiobook route for this because he reads this himself, and there's no pictures in this. I would have assumed. Can art on its own change global warming, stop Iran's president from denying the Holocaust, or half the spread of AIDS? The answer, I'm afraid, is no. In concert with other things, however, art can change the world, incrementally and by osmosis. This is because art is part of a universal force. It has no less purpose or meaning than science, religion, philosophy, politics, or any other discipline, and is as much a form of intelligence or knowing as a first kiss, a last goodbye, or an algebraic equation. Art is an energy source that helps make change possible. It sees things in clusters and constellations rather than rigid systems. It is both a bridge to a new vision and the vision itself, a medium or matrix through which one sees the world. It grants that pleasure is an important form of knowledge. Art is not optional, it is necessary. It is part of the whole ball of wax. Preach, Jerry. And lastly, quite randomly, I read Epic Drives of the World, Explore the Planet's Most Thrilling Road Trips by Lonely Planet, which is actually something I don't use. Yeah, I saw this at like a crunchy granola store next to like the Patagonia vests. They know their demographic. And coming from this one other New York Times like travel book that I read a couple years ago and absolutely hated, this is such a nice stark contrast because the New York Times one was so abhorrent in its like white privilege POV. It just had such a smarmy tone. The photos were literally all like white people traveling at leisure, enjoying themselves, and all the people of color were at work, like servicing the white people. But I'm happy to say that this book has a much more inclusive tone, both to people and the natural world at large. It's often said that Safari is one long drama, and in moments like these, it is easy to feel like a cast member with just a tiny role in a production that has been playing for millennia. I really enjoyed like the prose. I enjoyed all of the maps. It's very thorough, has a lot of good ideas, The photos were gorgeous. It actually did its job. Inspiring travel adventure and my inner, what was previously thought non-existent, wanderlust. Another like quite summery book, I must say, to be bookmarked for future travel ideas. So that was everything that I read in July. And again, because I don't ever know how to end any of my videos with an outro. And because I need to pack for a trip that I'm going on very soon, why don't we do a nice little pack with me for this outro, kind of long. But I'm going to try to keep this very concise. Like basically, I'm going to be going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And we're talking like books for the plane, a lot of beach days, a lot of like house lounging days. I'm going to try to vlog, but I am going with other family friends. And there'll be a lot of other little kids around, so I need to be tactful about it. And I know that my kid is gonna want to watch this vlog, so it's gonna be one of those like family vlogs. But I'll tell you the books that I'm gonna pack, which is ridiculous because it's literally just 2 weeks, but I want like a fucking Rory Gilmore vibe to this trip, reading wise at least. Like those are the vibes that I'm going for. I'm also going to feel free to leave some of these books behind because the house is, at this point, more of a family friend. Both the house and the owner of the house. And there's a little library nook, and I feel like I can leave some, like buzzy books behind for future guests to read. So that's also another criteria. Like I need to be able to love these books and leave them. So I have Bad Lawyer by Anna Dorn. This is an ARC that I purchased. You're not supposed to sell these. And I want to read this because I love Anna Dorn. I've been reading a lot of her books this year and last year. And one of the moms I'm traveling with is a lawyer. And this is supposed to be her, a memoir of law and disorder. So I want to be able to read this and, I don't know, be able to talk to her about it. I want to take Zadie Smith's On Beauty because I just read Howard's End by E.M. Forster. This is supposedly like, unsure if it's a retelling or if it's like in conversation with Howard's End, but either way, the two books are talking to each other. So I want to know what Zadie Smith has to say on class and privilege and houses and everything that Howard's End had to say. And also this cover is just lovely. I want to sit at the beach reading this hottie. Another hottie. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I've never read any Ishiguro before. I know that this is like another, fabulous, famous cover. Sitting on the beach reading this. Oof. I'm gonna be the hottest literary bitch on the beach. Another buzzy book lately, I think, is After Dark by Haruki Murakami. Nathan of Nathan's Nook was talking about his, I believe, reread of this book. And he talks about like how it gets those feels of like the quiet, lonely solo nights, which I won't be having. But I did really enjoy reading till late in the night in that house. And that is when I intend to read this book. Speaking of Nathan, I made plans to, for me, reread Shopgirl by Steve Martin on the plane. It's so slim. I don't even remember when I last read this book, but because I read Steve Martin's memoir a few months ago, I didn't particularly enjoy it. I wanted to dive back into a fiction of his. And I do have fond memories of this. This is another like hot cover. Can you imagine me in sunglasses on the beach, like, I'm taking Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. And again, another Nathan shout out because he just posted an incredibly lovely vlog of him reading this. For him, this is like an annual reread. For me, I rewatch this movie every August. It is such a perfect August movie to watch. So summery, so horny, as we all know. But I have never read this book before, and I can't wait to get into it. Another summery book I can only imagine is it's in the name, The Summer Book by Tove Jansson, who is the creator of the character Moomin, and Hawaii is like nuts over Moomin. I felt it would be appropriate in every way, in every shape and form. And I need to make a dent into my NYRBs. Speaking of NYRBs, another very slim, rather buzzy book, Chess Story by Stefan Zweig. Yeah, I know nothing of this book, of this writer. I just know that it's a short NYRB that I can easily pack and carry with me in any of my little tote bags that I will be traveling with. I'm gonna pack Dreamwork by Mary Oliver because for whatever reason, for me, a trip just isn't a trip without poetry, and this is a Mary Oliver that I have yet to read, so I want to check that off my list. I'm taking Sweet Days of Discipline by Fleur Jaeggy, another slim, lightweight paperback, a hot cover that will like blind people on the beach from the sun that I've been meaning to read for so long. I've had this book for so many years and I've yet to read it, so I'm gonna change that this summer. So I'm gonna take Paradise by Fernanda Melchor for the same reasons. It's buzzy, it's a hot cover, it's lightweight and slim paperback. I have no idea what this is about. I don't know if this is the most appropriate for like a family fun Hawaiian holiday. But I'm okay with leaving this book behind because I cannot get this sticker off without damaging, this paperback. So yeah, we'll see if I get to this or if I just donate this to the house. And last but not least, I'm bringing Nancy Mitford's Love in a Cold Climate purely because last time I went to this house 2 years ago, I brought Pursuit of Love, which is like the first installment of this trilogy. And it was my first time reading Nancy Mitford. I really enjoyed Pursuit of Love. Like, it felt very Little Women-y, but like British, and dare I say I preferred it over Little Women, which is the love of my life, of my childhood. So I just feel like it is utterly appropriate to bring the second installment of that trilogy with me on this trip and read it. Oh my god. And I pack light. I travel light. I only pack a carry-on and a personal item for 2 weeks, and I'm bringing 12 books with me this time. So yeah, I tend to not overpack, but with books, YOLO. So thanks for watching this kind of random video where I have like no makeup on. I literally look like I just fell out of bed. And kind of acting like it too. But it's July. What other month can you just lounge around in bed in the nude, in the sweltering heat, and think about love, life, lust? So with that, that wraps my July wrap up. I will next see you in Hawaii, and summer is very quickly and very surely wrapping up of its own. Yeah, I don't know how to end my videos. Thank you for watching. Bye.